to go?
I think so.
Okay. Steve, are you still on with us?
I'm here.
Excellent. All right, let's just wait till the top of the hour here. Just in case anybody wants to tune in. For anybody in the audience, if anybody wants to give public comment, we just need a red card filled out. I know a lot of you here just to observe, but just in case anybody else has come in. All right, it's 6 p.m. It's Monday, March 16th. This is the Somerset School Board regular session meeting. I will call this meeting to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jessica, if you could do the roll call, please.
Steve Degelow.
Here.
Corey Miller.
Here.
Ian McDonald.
Here.
Lori Belargin. Here. Bruce Belargin.
Here.
Danny Erickson. Here. Matt Foucault.
Here. District mission, the core values and protocol reminders are all listed on the agenda. There are some agendas on the wall if anybody in the audience wants to follow along as well. And now there'll be one amendment to the agenda. We'll be striking item number 3, the Spartan Spotlight, just due to timing and the weather. So it'll be moved to a future meeting. So if someone is ready, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda with that amendment.
I'll approve the agenda, removing item 3.
Motion by Bruce, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lori, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 2, public comment. I didn't receive any requests, Dr. Grambo.
I did not.
Final call, anybody in the audience here to give any public comment at all? Hearing none, we will move on to item number, our next item, which was 4, but now are 3. This is reports. First item is the listening session summary. 3 board members were here. Does anybody want to just give a quick report?
No one came.
Nobody was here. Okay, very good. We will continue to have those, so please, if you want to come and interact on a regular session night, please come in 30 minutes prior to the meeting. Next up is the district goal report.
All right, so I'll start that off. So we've been looking forward to this presentation for a while. I'm actually going to take kind of a step back and explain it since we have so many members of the audience. What we're doing is part of our continuous improvement process, and we break our year up into several 90-day cycles. So we have some long-term goals, and then we have some annual goals, and then we have 90-day actions where we break up those annual goals into the things that we do that we think will move us toward those goals. You see all the big posters around the room. These represent all the different goals that we have. And I'm going to start talking about our district level goals. We have what's called a cascading goal structure, which means we have district level goals, and then we break them down into goals by the school and by the different departments. And then all the way down to the fact that the teachers have individual goals, and then our students have goals that are all aligned to what we're trying to accomplish. I'm going to focus on 2 of our goals first. I'm going to pass it to each of the directors and principals to share their goals and then their cycle 2 actions. So we've already talked about cycle 1.
Just pause here. How should we position the camera? You think on the screen, or should we go
Oh, yeah, good
podium, or
idea.
screen?
Yeah, screen would be best because the slides will follow. Yeah. Yep.
There we go.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. So you won't be able to see this if you're online, but the goal is structured here. We can see we have our 4 pillars: students, staff, operations, and then community and families. And then we have, I said, long-term goals. Long-term goals mean if everything were operating exactly how we want, in 5-6 years, what would the district look like? But then we break that into annual goals, which are over here. We have a baseline which says, where are we right now according to that goal? Then we have a target which says, where do we want to be at the end of this year? What we're talking about now is in this chunk of the year, what have we accomplished that we said would align us to that goal? So we're going to look at the next one there, and that is the second pillar of staff. The focus is on retention, recruitment, and engagement. That is bringing in great people to do the work that we need to do for our kids, keeping the great people that we already have, and then making sure those folks feel engaged and listened to. We'll measure that by increasing the percentage of staff that indicate above average or high levels of engagement on a survey that we conduct. So in the spring, we'll conduct a survey with our staff and ask them some questions, and that's what we use to measure that level of engagement. A couple things that we did with this. One was we revised our wellness activities, and a shout out to Rochelle Lindquist, who does a lot of work on staff engagement and the benefits that staff get when they work here. Some of those are what we call hard benefits, that's like health care, that's like retirement, but then there's soft benefits too, things that we get that being part of the Spartan community that employees get. And she's very focused on all of that. We work with a company called Alera Group that helps us identify what the biggest bang for the buck when it comes to benefits would be. Later on, we're going to be talking about budget. Benefits, anyone that receives benefits or works in a company where you provide benefits, it's very expensive. Healthcare keeps going up, the price keeps climbing. So what we want to do is maximize that impact for staff. A couple things we do to make sure that what we're doing is aligned to their interests is we have listening sessions, and we'll actually wrap up our listening sessions this week with our last group. We broke all of our employees into different groups meaning like teachers would be a group, support staff would be another group, folks that work for Spartan Kids Club would be another group. And we go through a series of questions, and then it's Rod, Rochelle, and myself that meet with them, meet after school, and each meeting has actually lasted between an hour and a half. Very healthy, robust conversations about what they want and what they think would be most meaningful for them. We ask some tough questions like, if there were a neighboring district that offered something, what would it take to draw you away from the Somerset School District? Because we need to know, like, what are those things? It's very competitive right now, and we've got districts all around us that have similar sorts of jobs. So we did all that, and that was fantastic. And we also did our employee rounding, which is a little bit different. That's where we go and we meet, full admin team, everyone around the table here. We go out to each school, we meet with as many staff members as we possibly can, which was the vast majority, and we ask 3 simple questions. First question is, what's working well as you work to meet the needs of all your kids? Second question is, what can we do as an admin team that will make your life, your work more impactful? And then the third one is, who's someone that's been especially helpful to you? We asked those questions, and we asked a couple other questions this round to help identify where they wanted to go with their department or their team. And we use all that information then to revise our plan to make sure our folks feel engaged. Listening, just taking the time to listen is the most important thing we can do as an admin team. So that's what we did. Moving on to the next one, I'll be a little bit quicker with this one. I won't have to go to the poster. This is about our community. 85% of responding parents will indicate they believe staff members work hard to build a trusting relationship with my family. One of the first things that we realized is there was a really great structure in place already here, and it was the leadership cohort, and we needed to revitalize that and get that going. Leadership cohort is a group of family members and community members that will meet, and I've already started meeting this year on a regular basis to help us understand how the student experience is being sort of realized at home. So the stuff we plan, when we go home with all of our plans that we think will be great, how is it actually impacting families? And they help us improve. We had our initial meeting just last month. Actually, these posters were up for that group. They helped us engage in our goals, and we were looking for ways to have them feel more connected to our goal structure. But we're also going to take the next step with that group, and we're going to establish some long-term and short-term committees. The group is diverse. There's a lot of folks on it, but we want to make sure that the work we're doing is meaningful to them. So we might have a committee that's focused just on like academics and like things like homework and grading and all that. We might have another one that's focused more on operations, like the budget and how we take care of the facilities, to make sure people can have a voice where they want their voice heard. Plug to everyone here and anyone in the community, we're looking for new members, so if you're interested in participating in that leadership cohort, please do reach out. This summer, we're going to have a formal application process where we'll reach out, cast a wider net, see what folks might want to join. But if you're interested in joining this year, please do reach out. We need folks to be engaged. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Okay. All right, so you're going to hear a little bit of repetition when it comes to the first 2 goals that each of us have. From my department to Jesse's to the buildings, we all have goals that are focused on English language arts instruction and math instruction and achievement, okay? So long-term for the CIA department, this is a district-wide goal that we want 65% of our students to demonstrate proficiency on the English language arts portions of the Wisconsin Forward exam, as well as the pre-ACT Secure and the ACT test that our students take from 3rd to 11th grade. So right now, this last 90 days, I have worked with Pam very closely at the elementary school with a focus. They have a very large focus on fluency and also in how they are utilizing their English language arts block. So we are currently, the teams are looking at their ELA blocks to see how they're using their time to make sure that they're maximizing the time on both fluency and time on text and writing. So those are some pieces that we're doing right now, is reflecting on that, working also with Mindy Shoup, who's leading that charge at the elementary school. And then I have met with both the middle school and high school PLCs to review their fidelity checklist for their core resource, which is Study Sync, as we were looking at the data that we've gathered with that over the last 6 years that we've had that as our core resource, and just monitoring that to make sure that we are doing what the program calls for within the scope of that program. So that's been the ELA focus from my district level department. You can go to the next one. For math, our long-term goal is that 71% of students will demonstrate state proficiency on our Wisconsin state assessments. At the elementary school, we've had a big focus on math fluency as well, which is learning those facts to have the strategies to be able to know your facts in a timely manner. It doesn't mean rote memorization. It means understanding and having the ability to solve math problems in a manner that is fluent. In 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, we've implemented Math Fact Lab, which I know Pam's going to talk about as well, to promote that math fluency, and it is going very well. Initially, the teachers are really pleased with the results and the growth that they're seeing with their students. And then I meet with all of the principals every single week, and so we do have both math and ELA as a focus. I will be meeting starting this spring, which is in my next 90 days, to meet with the middle school and high school math departments as we will start the resource adoption process with them this spring. All right, you can go to the next one. The last one is, this is where you'll see the variant in our goals. My 3rd goal is to develop a curriculum improvement process across the entire district to provide some clarity in how we address our standards, what we're doing in the classrooms, how we adopt resources, and right now I'm in the process of building that curriculum improvement process so that we're making sure that it's not just about the next thing that we're getting. It's how are we using it and how do we know we're having impact with it? How do we know that what we're doing with kids in the classroom is having an impact on their learning and growth? And so that's a process that I am working to create, and then I'll be rolling that out later this spring. And then that is my next piece. I will prepare to share that with both the leadership cohort and then PLC leaders. We meet with all of the PLC leaders once every 90 days. And so part of our May meeting will be a focus on this process. So that is where I am at right now, my goals. Thank you.
I think I am next. Okay. So like Sarah said, our first 2 goals are really revolved around that math and ELA. So my goal really to take that subgroup of students with disabilities and ensure that they're going to demonstrate growth that matches or exceeds students without disabilities for ELA and also math for at least the 50th percentile. So a few of the things that I have done and that are in the process of for this cycle is reviewing the interventions that are being utilized with our students for instruction for both ELA and math. I'm just going to talk about goal 1 and 2 the same because they're the same. So completed a survey, so we kind of take a poll of everything that we have for our curriculum and then the different resources that they're using for teaching the ELA and math. Also on one of our professional learning days, we spent some time doing some additional research on, okay, well, this is what we have, but what are other people using? What's research showing for getting kind of more growth, and doing some research on kind of cost and time and kind of all of those things. So that was a big kind of step in that process. Sadly, that next step, reviewing our ELA progress reports for math, that was an activity that I've had to push back now twice, and with our virtual learning day today, we weren't able to do that because it really needs to be kind of a hands-on, in-person, where we're going through the different progress reports, looking at it, providing feedback to team members, and kind of looking at, is what we're doing working, or do we need to make some changes? So that's rescheduled for April 8th now, and then we'll be able to kind of, from that, really want to take a, like, okay, so of the interventions and the curriculum that we're using, are we seeing the progress that we need to, and if not, what are we changing, and where else do we need to fill those gaps in with our intervention time? So that is for ELA and math. They're the same kind of system. And then, so if you want to go to the third goal, is really, like Sarah said again, it's a little bit of a different goal, but this one is revolving around increasing the percentage of students who feel safe at school and have a trusted adult. So this has been a really fun goal to work on, and kind of working through the different steps and process. Been working with the school counselors on kind of our system and our process to ensure when students do report bullying, that they feel they have a resolution in that process. So we've spent some time kind of going through and making not only just an exit ticket for students that have gone through that process, but also more of like, it's morphed into like a flow chart of like, if some type of behavioral incident occurs, does that kind of meet that threshold for bullying, and what does that look like? And we spent a lot of time, our school counselors spend a lot of time working with students on defining bullying and what that is, and how it's, intentional aggressive behavior, how it can be an imbalance of power, and then also that it's repeated over time. So making sure our students really, really understand that. So if it meets that threshold, then going down kind of that exit ticket for both, the victim and the aggressor, like what needs to happen after that process. And then if it doesn't, also still that we're ensuring that we have some documentation and process of, it doesn't meet that bullying threshold, but these are the steps that we're using to address that in different capacities. So it's been a lot of really great time spent with our pupil service staff to kind of develop that system. More to come. We're in the beginning phases of it. And then last week and this week and next, we're really in the phases of rolling out the Speak Up, Speak Out. So that is that anonymous reporting tool, basically a platform for students, staff, parents. Parents will be receiving some of this information this week as well. So met with elementary and high school staff to kind of train them on what Speak Up, Speak Out is and how it can be used. Letters will go out to the families on March 19th. And then that week of March 23rd is really going to be training our students on kind of what it is. And it's not just reporting crimes that happen, it's more about prevention and about reporting concerns that we're seeing. And it can be with active like threats, but it also can be different mental health concerns, different alcohol or drugs, different bullying incidents. So it can be a whole spectrum of things. So that's kind of those three phases that we're in the process of completing. And then also meeting with the school counselors again of looking at that data for the My Savers reports of kind of where they're at for the social, emotional, academic concerns and the plans that they have in place and any goals we need to fill.
I'll just pause right there.
Yeah.
If anybody has questions for each one, is it appropriate just maybe
Sure. Yeah.
pause? Okay,
Mhm.
just so everybody knows. But maybe that Speak Up, Speak Out, can you just talk a little bit more about that? Who runs the platform? Where
Yeah.
does the report go?
Yes.
What's the turnaround timeline?
Yeah, great question. So it is run by the Department of Justice, the Office of School Safety. So it's a completely free tool that they run and house. It is like manned 24/7. So anytime a report goes in, so you can report it like online or you can call. We'll have different QR codes that will take you right to that platform. And it's for the whole state of Wisconsin. It's run by. It immediately gets funneled through if it is an immediate threat, if law enforcement needs to be contacted, or if it just comes to our building administrative team. And then we'll get all of those and kind of take the next steps for how we need to address it.
Interesting,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, absolutely. You'll get more information on the 19th as
Okay,
well.
very good.
It's a great platform.
Yeah, a lot of our surrounding districts utilize it and we've had really positive things with lots of the prevention, right? Stopping some of these things before they occur, so.
Good.
How long has it been active?
It's been around for a while, I wanna say maybe 5
That's what I'm
years.
saying, yeah, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, yeah, I don't have an exact date, but it's been around for a little while though. And I think we've kinda like dabbled in it, but we haven't fully rolled it out. 'Cause it is free, anybody can go online and you can say like, I'm in this community, it's just we haven't fully
up to the whole district.
And then a question for Sarah too.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember when, we rolled out the goals presentation earlier this year, how we got to those percentages, but can you remind us, like, the 65% of students? were
Sure
available?
can.
All that data, sorry.
So we had, and Dave can correct me because he's really the great data guy here, but, so 65% of our students being proficient would place us at the 90th percentile with our comps against the state. So we looked at districts that were of similar size, demographic to us, and then we ranked them out and put ourselves within that rank. So we had 20 districts that were comparable with, right? They're not just here, not just our conference schools in this part of the state, but all over the state. And so when we placed ourselves in there, we wanted to be in that top quartile, so like the top 5. And so in order for us to get there, eventually, we need to have 65% of our students to be at the proficient level across, from grades 3 through 11. And that would put us then at the 90th percentile in the state. So it's kind of it's like student proficiency, but then our district ranking. Does that help? Does that ring a bell?
Yep,
Okay.
that does ring a bell.
Okay.
And it sounds way better than just the plain, like, 65%.
Right.
Yes, correct. Yeah, that level
You get
puts
the
us at
math,
the
it makes
90th
sense.
percentile. Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
Right, and that was including, students with, certain learning disabilities as
Yep.
well, right?
Yes,
So
yep, that is,
all in.
so this is everyone. Jesse's breaks it out by disabilities.
groups.
Yep, mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, moving on.
Next. So, business service goals, so these are gonna look a lot different than everybody else's here tonight. So my first goal was to have a compensation plan ready, communicated to the staff by the end of the school year. Kind of the first steps that I've taken in that is I did a preliminary budget presented to the board back in February. And like to keep those ongoing so that when we come to spring here, I present a compensation plan that you guys are well versed in, understand it, can hopefully pass a nice plan for us. I've also been doing monthly updates to the budget model. Every time I get a piece of information that we can add to the budget model to make it more accurate, I do that. Whether it become from more expenses or revenue side that's coming in, or if I hear some updates from the state on how things might be changing. I've also ran 2 different compensation scenarios using different percentages and kind of looking to see how those are gonna fit into the budget model and how it affects us. Whether we have a deficit budget or a positive budget for next year. And then like Dave mentioned, we've been having a listening session with all the employee groups, kind of getting their perspective on what they would like to see, not just guessing and thinking what they might want to see, but so we've been getting a lot of good feedback from the employees, and I'd like to implement a few of those things that we did this year that are feasible. My second goal is to build a long-term maintenance schedule to prioritize the high maintenance needs and build a schedule of routine maintenance with the intention of building a budget to support operational excellence. Some of the steps I've taken is we've tried to identify some budget areas that we can dedicate to maintenance. We've met with Wold a few different times, and they're building us a capital improvement plan. They've been very helpful. They've been going through each of the buildings and looking up and down everywhere and detailing exactly what needs to be done. And they're gonna give us a timeline on when those things should be done. That'd be very helpful for us going forward. And then we've talked about starting a Fund 46, which is the capital maintenance plan, where we can set aside money to help us pay for these capital improvement plans. So I've done some research on how we're gonna get that started. Seems pretty simple. We'll have to come back with a resolution for the board to pass and fund put a little bit of money into that fund. It can be as little as $10, just something to get it started, because like I've mentioned before, we can't dip into this money until the plan's been open for 5 years, so that would at least get the clock started and get us rolling there. And then my third goal is to provide useful educational information for all interested parties regarding the finances of the district and education about school funding topics. So if you were to go to the school website under the business services page, we have 11 different topics out there, useful information for people that want to view it. I've gone through and updated all 11 of those areas, so everything's up to date and ready to go for anybody that wants to look at that information. I've also gone out to other school districts and areas, taken a look at their websites and seen what they're doing. And to be honest, most of them aren't doing anything or very little at all, so we're way ahead of the curve on that. So I think we're being very transparent with our taxpayers, and if you want to go out there and see what's going on, they can get a very good picture of our financial situation. That's everything I had, unless you guys have any questions.
How much of our budget is spent on payroll, compensation?
Between payroll and benefits, it's right about 85%. It's the vast majority.
If you don't maintain that or compete with neighboring districts, you're going to lose all your employees.
Good chance, yes.
So it's going to increase every year, it's going to make our budget tighter and tighter.
Correct.
So it's a deficit.
Yep. That's our main issue. Like Dave talked about, retention. When we were meeting with the employee groups, that's our main concern is compensation compared to the neighboring districts.
That's why it was important to meet with individual groups too, because they had different interests. So, and when we divided those groups, we also analyzed those groups with their salary and benefits against other districts. And some of our groups are right in line at a very competitive level, others are out of whack. So when we come forward with a salary plan, that will be part of that plan too, to slowly get those groups that are out of whack up to a more comparable level.
Any highlights from the listening session with the employee groups? Sounds like a really great idea. Anything stand out that you remember? Put me on the spot.
Well, it's been a lot of good conversation. We thought it would be more about pay and benefits, but they go into all sorts of topics. About all the work levels in the buildings and stuff like that.
It's an interesting conversation, and we go in, we let them know that this is a safe space, you say what you want, let us know. Like if there are things that aren't working for you, you have to let us know, this is the time to do that. So people often will like apologize in advance, like sorry, but no, that's what we need to hear, that's what we're here for. So they were very productive conversations.
Yeah, I would imagine that would play into the whole cultural piece. If you can't make top pay, if you have the best culture, then that's the second best retention method perhaps. So it's good to hear you doing that.
Anybody else? Moving on.
Okay. Elementary school, our ELA Language Arts goal is that 70% of our students will demonstrate proficiency. Remember, another part of our goal is around Act 20 and reducing the number of reading plans that we have as a school system. Action steps that we've taken, teams are still in their book study around fluency, so they've been doing a professional book. Really defining a clear definition of what is fluency at each level. Fluency is different in kindergarten than it is in third grade. And then really giving strategies a go, trying them out, see how they work, bringing it back to their PLCs and making those changes as needed to support the students. We've really done some diagnostic assessments to try to really hone in on what each student needs to be successful in fluency and seeing how fluency has grown. Feeling really good about that and moving into deeper work and people leading each other, having really great successes and saying, hey, this worked great, give it a go, and really seeing some growth with our students. In math, our goal is 79% of our students will demonstrate proficiency. As Sarah talked about, we started the Math Fact Lab, and this has been really neat to look at students that came in really low levels and how many levels they've grown. And it breaks down what a student needs and then gives them practice and what it is that they need to be more proficient in fluency and different. It has adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, but it also goes deeper levels, and it's not just, 1 times 1, it's multi-digit, and it grows with the student and helps students see what they need to be more proficient in fluency. And then this is year 2 in our math expressions, and teachers are really seeing where kids are excelling, where they need to make some changes, how things are going, and really working together. And we are really seeing some really good successes with math expression this year and just our data. And then my third goal, I am super excited about, I'm excited about all my goals, but this year we're really focusing, as you know, we've had a really strong Learn to Love program, but we've been trying for years to get it to be school-wide. Just recognizing that not every student can be involved in something that's on a Saturday afternoon, so we've been doing passion projects or community projects at each and every grade level. We still do projects as a whole school, but we've gotten some really deep partnerships with the Somerset Food Pantry. I'm not sure if people are aware, but we have a big box in the front of our school, and we are collecting plastic bags, like Target bags or Walmart bags, or even bags that your head of lettuce comes in. And when we get to 2,000 pounds of bags, the food pantry gets a bench, recycled, like by design or by the yard kind of bench for out in front of the food pantry. We've worked with Coco's Heart Dog Rescue, doing a drive for things that they need. We did a really fun Cats versus Dogs fundraiser to kind of raise pennies and for the dog rescue. And then we've continued to we've grown our relationship with the Deerfield. We've gone to them, but now they're coming to us monthly. And they're coming and reading with our students, coming in by the busload and reading with students. And it's really neat to see them in our school and to recognize faces month after month, and they're really comfortable coming in and talking, and it's really been a neat experience. As I said, we've done 2 all school. We did a cereal drive for the Somerset Food Pantry, and it was really cool. We had 500 boxes of cereal, all like a Domino's around the gym, and the kids it was super cool when it went off and went around the gym. And then our plastic drive. And then K, 2, 3, and 4 have all completed passion projects. 4th grade wrote letters to the veterans at Veterans Day. It's just really neat things that each grade level is coming up with. It's really exciting to see what they're doing. Questions about elementary?
All right, middle school. So we'll look at both our goals, and I'm going to talk about what we've been doing, because our process and how we went after it goes at both of them at the same time. 70% of our students demonstrate proficiency in that English language arts. Moves us to the 90th percentile, that long range goal. Can you scroll to the next one, Jess? And then in math, 77% of our students demonstrate proficiency, gets us to the 91st percentile in that state. So things that we've done in this last third of our year, we've done a really deep dive into what we have and how we use it in every content area. English language arts, math, science, social studies, art, Phi-Ed, music. To look at what we have, how we use it, where we're supporting our goals around craft and structure and statistical analysis. And what we found is people are like, hey, I've got a lot of stuff that I've kind of been doing. How can I do it more and bring it into my room more and support everything they're doing? Lots of great, I'll call it professional development from within, where our staff members have embraced it. They've worked together across content areas. So like, hey, in art, I want to do this to support some reading stuff. Does that make sense as they're working with an ELA teacher? And so every content area presented what they have, how they're doing it, and put it out in front of everybody. Great conversations back and forth, connections made that way too. Got feedback from peers on what can we do next in those areas to move the bar in both of those at once across the building. And so that's why I kind of said them both at the same time, because we're trying to attack them at the same time from every aspect we have going on in our building. Kids might not recognize it at first, but if you're sitting in art class or PE or music, you are doing things that are directly impacting math and ELA. And it's how we're doing it, not just what we have that we're looking at there for our practices. So it's been a really good, excited at what we have and just watching our staff dig in together to make improvements in what we're doing. Goal 3 is connecting our middle school more to the community. We had some things in place, as you mentioned the first time we talked. The biggest thing we've done since then is we've continued to work with the connection we have with the chamber, and with 8th grade tech ed was our primary focus so far. At the end of their HEX, they went out and visited a business in the community, saw in action what they're doing. So we've toured Preco, Woodstock Builders, and SMC twice. Each of those businesses have done an awesome job explaining what they do and what are some of the jobs that are there, not just, for example, Woodstock Builders, there's more than pounding nails and boards, right? And Al did a great job of starting it out like that. Like, there's so many other things that are in this industry that are jobs you might be interested in. We had it set up with Big Bad Toy Store, which I think would be really interesting because they're an internet-based business. But they had a big project come up, so that's why we went back to SMC twice. So we're looking to get them on the docket moving up here. One of the cool things about everyone we've visited so far, they have a Somerset connection. Either they're graduates from Somerset, founded in Somerset, and so that's one of the messages those businesses are giving to our kids, like, hey, it can happen right here. You can be part of it. And so the people we've been working with have been doing a great job presenting that to our kids. I'm sure some of them I've seen some kids just dive in and love it. Some kids at first are kind of hesitant and hang back because I went on all of them but one. And then you see them just start to see other things like, oh, maybe. Because they hadn't thought about that before. So that's been really a positive piece that's moving in the right direction for that goal that we got going. Questions you have about?
Yeah, I'll just make a comment that, Joe, I really appreciate what you're doing at the middle school with local businesses. It's going to make a huge difference to these kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Next.
All right, so next is gonna be high school, a little bit different. Trent can't be here, so he put together a video, and then Amanda's here to answer questions if they come up.
Vision goals, please at any point. Hi everyone, sorry that I'm not able to be there tonight. I'll talk about the high school long-term vision goals. Please at any point too, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out after you hear this. I'm always happy to answer questions. So our first goal that centers around ELA. Some of the big things that we've chewed off during this cycle is providing professional learning in all of our content areas around writing expectations in the writing process. And this was very powerful for us because each teacher, each classroom teacher brought forth some sort of writing activity that they would do with their class. And that's any content area in our building. Everybody's at different parts on their journey with this. So if there wasn't something that was currently being implemented, something that they could implement, then we had a team that was willing to take on some leadership roles with this and really give some guided professional learning around feedback loops in the writing process to ensure that that's happening at a level that's appropriate for kids in the different grade levels. So that was an initial step with that. Our next step going into the next cycle with this will be an implementation. So we looked at an assessment during this cycle, provided feedback on what was good with that, what we would want to consider, and now it's into the implementation phase with that. The next thing here was initiating a review of core resource must-do and may-dos. So this was good to just bring clarity on what we can be doing within our current curriculum and resources. And then we administered our mid-year progress learning assessment, reviewing our performance with our students, adjusting our Spartan time goals. With math, some similarities with our ELA goal and our math goal, but one of the main differences between the two during this cycle was reviewing and really nailing down our ability thinking classroom non-negotiables for our practices. So regardless of which classroom we're in the math rooms in the high school, what are our non-negotiables when it comes to building thinking classrooms? With that, prioritizing our assessments, aligning them to our core resource, making sure we got fidelity with that, and then administering our mid-year progress learning assessment, reviewing our performance with the students and adjusting our Spartan time goals. With goal number 3, with student involvement, we did a real deep dive into our roster of students who were not currently involved. What we were able to find with that is there were some kids that were actually involved that said that they weren't involved with any sort of programs. And we also were able to identify just some kids that would be able to get connected with programs that we currently offer. So that really comes down to having conversations with our kids, so we were able to find by getting kids connected with the right adults or just having some initial conversations, getting kids connected, and then promoting what our current programs are. So that's kind of the initial part. Then what we've done here is we've developed an engagement plan that we'll be initiating here for students that are not involved, to kind of identify what are the barriers or what are types of programs that they'd be looking for down the road here as well. Couple things that I want to point out that wouldn't show up on these slides, but that do fit in my opinion. We worked on a book study with our building leadership team involving different instructional practices that we are going to be bringing to our building over the course of the next couple of months and mainly in the next school year to really bring some clarity on our educational practices and instructional practices. That has been very powerful for us to have those conversations and dive into those resources. We also brought in CISA to work with our not only our PLC leaders, but also our departments on assessment planning, blueprinting our assessments, aligning them to standards, and really getting some feedback on best practices for that. So that's been very powerful for our people as well. And then the other thing that I want to highlight, as part of our 90-day plan, we completed peer observations in our building. This was something that we learned from the elementary and from the middle school. That was very powerful. We brought that into the high school here this year, that we felt we could learn from each other and learn from other people within our district as well. We had set a goal during this last cycle to have 100% of our staff members complete a peer observation, and we hit that goal, which was awesome for us to do that. A couple of things that I think were important for us to be able to see. Earlier on our ELA slide, I talked about professional learning and initiating a review of our core resource must-do names. One thing that came kind of organically out of that is through the peer observation process, we had people able to see what that looks like in practice in our middle school, because we use the same resource. In our math department, people were able to see effective use of building thinking classrooms in action to see that model. So that some of those things happen very organically, which is awesome. Now moving forward in our next cycle, we're actually going to be doing a second round of this with the goal of seeing not only a different teacher this time around, but a different department, and then having share outs at our staff meetings of what we took away from them. So again, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes the goal report. Questions specific to high school or questions in general about the process?
I just want to say thanks for putting it together. I think just the more time we keep hitting and pushing these items, the more we see them presented and we present them to the staff and the students, I think it's beneficial just to keep it on everybody's mind. More attention to it, I think, but good to do. So thanks for putting it all together. I know it's a lot and it's why representing, but I think it's good to keep refreshing it multiple times for us.
I agree. I think the community piece is important. I think too often we kind of just fall into this silo of the school district and just education. So it's nice to hear all of the community involvement through each building. I think that's really valuable.
That was a fun one to watch that emerge when we started this conversation and started putting together the goals. The way it gravitated to really getting us out in the community and then bringing folks back in, whether that is more of a passion project at the elementary or very business focused at the middle school. Those connections have been great.
Any other comments?
I have a question for whoever's brave enough to answer it. So the percentage of proficiency you see from elementary to middle to high school dropping.
Yep.
Is that typical?
Yes.
And would you say that the higher numbers at the elementary school are going to filter into the middle school and the high school, or is that something that just typically happens everywhere?
So you typically see a reduction as they get older. We systemically, though, have pretty steady achievement all the way through. We don't see like a massive, we're way up here and then we drop off. We're pretty stable, which means systemically we're in a good spot. We always want to get better, but yes, you do tend to see a drop off the older the kids get.
That's
I
why
don't-
those I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's why those percentiles are so important, because then we're looking at middle schools against other middle schools, high schools against other high schools, as opposed to something in general. Now, what I say systemically, like statewide, that's probably something we need to be looking at, like why is this happening? Now, part of it, elementary to middle school, a little bit different, same assessments. When you go to high school, it's a completely different assessment for ELA and math. So then, it's a little bit of apples and oranges, so hard to know exactly what's happening there, so we have to rely on those percentiles a little bit more with that transition.
On that, I had a parent ask me about, what I thought of the testing and how, so I shared some of the stuff, like, well, there's a lot that goes into it, if you wanna read, go, but they had the idea that I thought was interesting to ask you, if, a parent ever wants to get like another reference. I was like, is there just like a book report? I was reading one of our kids' book reports recently, like, there's standard books and like, here, read this and answer the questions for me, and like be able to maybe get some at-home involvement along with that. You know, alternate baselines of just, here's other baselines of where they should be. If they're at this grade level, they should be able to do this and that. I'd be interested.
Well, I mean, so we have, so what this is based on is our state level, right? That one
Yeah.
shot a year, right?
Yeah.
So within the district, at the elementary, the middle school, we use FastBridge. So in the fall, kids take math and ELA, and then in the winter, and then in the spring to see at like our district level. At the high school this year, they've implemented Progress Learning, which is the first time they've actually had an assessment that matches what the state assessment is. So we can use that. And then it's classroom assessment after that, as far as that, you know, I mean, I don't know, a lot of kids that wanna go and take a test at home with their parents. I mean, I have a few kids, I don't think they would have appreciated that piece, but I get it. But if the parents ever have questions and they do wanna know more information, please reach out. Like, we're happy to find other things. Everything that we do would be pretty standardized. There's not like if they're gonna take a test where you wanna know how they're doing against something, it's gonna be against a standard. And so we
Yeah.
utilize that with our FastBridge at the elementary and middle, and then Progress Learning at the high school. So,
And moving away from the idea of an assessment, because that would be more challenging, but just in general, we always talk about the standards. The standards are broken down by grade level. We have them for all of our content areas, and they literally define what a student should know and be able to do. So there's not an assessment that's linked to it, but at least a family member could say, oh, in 8th grade math, this is what my child should be able to do and should know. And then we go through a process of prioritizing those, because there's just too many. So we look for the highest leverage standards that we think will get the most bang for the buck, and then those are what we assess more regularly in the classrooms.
I would say just one other piece of that too is, because you hear concerns about like, well, my child isn't great at, you know, taking an assessment on a computer, or
Yeah.
maybe they're not putting forth the effort, or maybe we have some assessment fatigue. We talk a lot about just triangulating the data, so while we're using the state assessment as one point, we're using the district assessment as another, and the classroom too. So we're taking all of those pieces into consideration, then also if a student gets placed in an intervention, then there's more assessments with that, right? So more data points along the way.
Awesome.
All right, moving on.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the topic is potential referendum timeline. So before we get into that, I'm gonna talk about something we just mentioned 2 times. We talked about long-term goals, and then we talked about some long-term projections that we use in other areas. So you'll hear that idea, long-term, long-term, long-term. Both when we started as a team, because a lot of us are new to our positions, we shared that 12,207. Among our entire admin team, we have 12 collective years of working in the position we're in. Relatively new, but 207 years of experience in educational leadership. So one of the things we decided to do and to leverage that is say, okay, we have a fresh start here. Let's look at how we do things and see if there's areas we can improve. And one of the things we thought we could all do and all learn from is thinking more long-term. So long-term when we look at our academic goals, long-term when we talk about things like our facility and maintenance plan, and then long-term when we think about budgeting. So Rod was working on long-term budget projections, and when I say finalized, you're never really finalizing a budget projection because you're always changing those assumptions, getting closer and closer to what would be accurate. So when you're talking 5 years out, there's a considerable level of guesswork that goes into that. When you're talking next year, you're more kind of locked in. He's going to share about that in a little bit, but when we had the first look at those projections, we had a bit of a uh-oh moment. Like it falls off fast. We have a really growing deficit year after year. And Rod's going to share the specifics of that projection, what goes into those. But we realized we were hoping that we wouldn't be having a conversation this year already about a referendum, but just to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars and investing in education, we thought we need to have this conversation. So the timeline that is up there, Jess, you can bring that up on the screen. This would be the most accelerated timeline. Like if we were going to get after this as quickly as possible, what would we be talking about? And we'd be talking about an operational referendum November 3rd of 2026, so a couple months into next school year. It falls on a general election. Generally speaking, you want to do referenda on a general election. You don't want to sneak them through in the little elections where you don't have a lot of people at the polls. You want a time when the most people are going to get out to the polls and express their wishes. So this is an operational referendum conversation that we're having. There's two kinds of referenda in Wisconsin. There's always, or as long as any of us would be able to remember, been capital referendums, which those are like you're going to build a PAC, you're going to renovate the middle school, you're going to build an elementary school, big projects. So like in your home world, that would be like, I'm going to build an outbuilding, I'm going to put up a new garage, that's the capital stuff. Then there's the other kind, and it's actually relatively new. It's only been in the state of Wisconsin since the mid-90s, and they're called operational referendums. They're in place because the state intentionally, sometimes you'll hear the state funding formula is broken. It's not broken, it does exactly what it's intended to do. It's intended to push decisions about funding schools to the local taxpayer. It's not a bad thing, that's what it's designed to do, but we need to be clear that's what it's designed to do. And with that, they invented this funding formula. It's an operational referendum. What that says is voters get to say if the school gets to raise their authority to tax to fund schools. So that started back in the 90s, but in 2008 something happened. They decoupled, so we had a recession. It was a big deal. A lot of people were really hurting financially, so they decoupled the state increase in school funding from inflation. That's never come back. So it's been 18 years of doing that, and that's created this gap where state funding hasn't kept up with our ability to do what we need to do to fund schools. So it puts more pressure on the local taxpayer. So this timeline, where the first conversation would be a board planning session looking at April 6th, that'd be the next board meeting, to really sit down and say, what might this look like? Not making a decision if we are or are not going to referendum, we're saying what might it look like if we do. And then April through June, that's when Rod is going to be very busy refining those projections, making sure we have a firm understanding of what our situation is, and then also what would that impact be if we do go to referendum, what might that look like. And then in between that time, if we decide that we're moving in the direction that we want to consider it, my strongest recommendation would be we survey the community. And when we survey the community using a company that they have a design to be able to do this, where every resident in the district would receive a mailing with the QR code where they could respond. It's one-time use only. It can also go via email, but it's one-time use only. You can't fill it out multiple times. And use that information to assess the community's interest in moving forward and eventually the tax tolerance too. What's a level that they think would be suitable? When we get into the projections, you'll see why that is gonna be a really important question, because it compounds relatively quickly. And then the latest that we would be able to have a resolution from the board would be August. So it's March now, so several months, but in August would be the latest point that the board would be able to make a resolution to say, yes, we plan to go to an operational referendum, and then November 3rd would be the election day. Again, this is the most accelerated version. This would allow funding for the 27-28 school year, not next year. Next year, we will not be operating under new referendum dollars, no matter what we do. We're past that point. This would be funding to start the 27-28 school year. We have a couple other things that we're gonna share based on questions that were asked, but then first, I'm gonna turn it over to Rod to share the budget projections and talk a little bit about what assumptions are in those projections.
Yep,
With that one?
yep.
No,
There we go.
this
There we
one,
go.
sorry.
All right, so you can, as we've talked about before, you can see that for next year, we're projecting budget deficit of a little over 200,000. We've talked about that. But the next year it jumps to almost 600,000. 3 years out, we're looking just under $1 million, and 1.2, and then 1.5 5 years out. So as you see, it jumps dramatically. So this is based on, is the fourth and fifth lines down, salaries increasing going forward at 2.8%, so less than 3%. Benefits is like at 4%, almost 5% in the first year, then it's right around 3.5%. Benefits are a little bit higher than salaries, just mainly because health insurance tends to go up so much. Some of the other factors is projecting a declining enrollment. We're sure hoping that it's gonna remain steady or maybe increase, but as the state's gone, pretty much everybody in the state is having declining enrollment, so I think that's a safe assumption to keep. And even if we were to, between 26, 27, and 20, 30, and 31, that's a drop of 53 students. And you times that times our revenue limit, it's about 550,000, so it's not enough to make up the total deficits as we go forward. It also assumes that there's no increase in the supply budgets. Most other expenses are set to increase by about 2.8%. It's assuming that there's no changes to the current state funding model. So if the state changes their funding model a little bit, that should help, as long as they do something positive for us. It does not include any funds that are set aside for buildings and grounds. So anything that we need to do, like replace the generator at the middle school, replace the roof on this building, none of that is factored in. It's just basically getting us by based on our current buildings and grounds budget that we have from year to year. I think that covers most of the assumptions that I have in there.
I have a quick question. Can you just clarify the deficit, the 209 to 578? Each year, does that start back at zero, or is that rolling that previous in?
Well, it resets each year.
So like the 27, 28, the 578 deficit, that would be assuming that the 209 from the previous year is figured out
It's
somehow.
figured out, right?
We start
Paid
back
off and
at
figured
zero,
out,
it's
yeah.
not rolling that in.
Exactly.
Thank
So
you.
I got a question. You mentioned, did I hear that right, that you were projecting 53 students lost in enrollment?
Yes, in the next 5 years.
Yep, and to be clear, that those aren't students leaving, we're graduating higher numbers than we're bringing in. So until we level out and find that level ground where the numbers that we're bringing in are consistent all the way through, there's just fewer younger kids than we have older kids. So until that bubble is through, we're gonna continue to see that overall number drop. We would have to make up we'd have to have in-migration of about, probably about 50 kids a year to make up just the graduation versus JK number discrepancy.
All right, the only reason I brought that up, is we have a lot of buildings out here. I understand what you're saying, even if we have new families joining, they might be on the underside, but, yeah, but that's just my concern is that, you know, we're giving up on, maybe not giving up, but, it's still want, to expect that we can get our enrollment up. We're close to Twin Cities, a lot of people living out here, we have a lot of buildings. It's kind of a dismal projection.
Yeah, it is, and it kind of is intentionally because we want to make sure that we underpromise and overdeliver. We don't want to be in a position where we say, yeah, we're pretty sure we're going to grow, and these kids are going to come back, and we're going to see our numbers climb, and then it doesn't happen, and the deficit is worse. So this really is a conservative, it's not worst case scenario, but a realistic, not great scenario. We're hoping that every bit of news we get from the state, from enrollment along the way, makes this scenario better over time, but we just want to be careful that we don't overpromise.
Hey, we're just talking about 1 year here, so how many short-term operating referendums are we gonna be seeing in the next 10 years?
Well, that's a good question. There's many different ways we could structure this, and that would be that conversation we'll have in more detail in April. But you could go anywhere from a recurring, which adds taxing authority forever, to a non-recurring for say 5, 7, 10 years, whatever that number is we decide. Those are all the things we need to discuss with the board to figure out what avenues we want to pursue and explore via survey.
Sure. And then in my research, it looks like maybe 68% of the school districts in Wisconsin have not done short-term or seeking short-term operating referendum.
No, that I don't think is accurate. The number of districts that are operating currently under an operational levy is really significant. It's I don't know the exact number, but it's well over 50%. And every year that number increases because more are going each year. There's 72 alone going this April. 72 out of 411 districts are going to operational this April.
So it's like 20%.
Yeah, and that's the new batch. It's, I don't want to throw out a percentage because I don't want to get it wrong, but I'll find out and get back. I'll email the board what that percentage is.
What would 53 students equate to at the, 5-year 1.5 million?
Yes, yeah, it's roughly 550,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not enough to make up the difference.
Yeah, even if we were flat with enrollment, we'd still see an increasing deficit year over year. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the lever that we have the most influence over is enrollment. That has to be where we focus our efforts. That's the one that we can talk till we're blue in the face about the state funding formula. We have very little control over that. We can advocate and we can write our legislators, but we've been doing that and everyone's been doing that, and that hasn't changed in the last 20 years. But what we do inside our district to engage families, to engage outsiders to consider, to change our programming, that's all what we want to talk about. Now I'm just going to throw this out there as fast forward. That also requires an investment. You don't just put out a social media post and everyone starts running. You got to have programming to follow that and back that up.
Can I say something? When I agreed to raise the levy at 10% last fall, I did that knowing we were short on time, but I thought we were gonna look at areas to save.
Yes.
Work on some cuts, so I would really like to see some of those before we get much deeper into this.
Absolutely, yeah. So the next presentation that I share will talk a little bit about that and what we'll plan on doing. Yeah.
I kind of hijacked your, maybe you weren't done yet, but, and you're maybe gonna hit this. Can you just talk about that bottom line, the mill rate? I see it's decreasing over these years. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Why it's decreasing each year?
Yeah, one of the main reasons it's decreasing is a referendum debt. Right now we're paying close to $4 million a year. In a couple of years it drops down to $3 million. So that's the main reason why it's dropping.
So the mill rate will go down, we're not paying that debt, but essentially the money's, you can't just, the money's
Right.
gone.
Right, because
The
that.
ability to
debt-
tax it
Yeah,
doesn't
debt
exist.
payment is different than the operational. Yeah,
There's a revenue tax.
yeah, so, yeah, really good question. All right, are you good, Rod?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much for doing that, appreciate it. I'm gonna walk up here, I think it'll be easier to present from up here. So, one of the biggest questions we get, and I think it's sort of the conversation we're having, is, so what have you done to cut, and what have you done as we've lost enrollment? So this number, this stat, I do know, it's well over 80% of the districts in Wisconsin are declining enrollment. The biggest driver of that is not conditions in the school district, people are having fewer kids. That's what's driving that. There are a few communities that have such exponential growth, a few suburbs around Madison, there's a few little pockets throughout the state where they're in just a different situation. They are seeing increased enrollment even though birth rates are down. As Steve said, and I 100% agree, we are primed to see growth. We have a lot of really good things happening in our community right now that could paint a picture of potential growth in enrollment. We're very hopeful that that will be the case, but we can't count on that necessarily. So I put this together to answer the question, so what have you done over these past couple years to adjust for the fact that enrollment has decreased? And what does that mean when staffing? Because what you'll hear a lot, or you'll read on Facebook, is, well, cut, cut, cut. Okay, so we'll have that conversation, but what have we done already? So, first, this graph. The red line is our staffing ratio. And what we mean by a staffing ratio is per how many kids do we have one employee in the district. So the higher that line, the more lean or efficient we are. If we go back, the reason we started in 2019 in this measure is because in 2019, we passed $1 million recurring referendum. That means $1 million of new taxation to fund our schools went in place at that time. Right here, you see the sharp increase in efficiency. That was 22-23 when we had to have $1.4 million of cuts. That's a deep cut for a district our size. $1.4 million in cuts means you're cutting deep into staff. You're not reducing copy paper and getting more efficient lights. That doesn't come up with 1.4 million. You're cutting staff. So that we became much more efficient there. This blue line, what that shows us is all middle border conference districts, plus the other districts that are adjacent to us that are not middle border. You see this line going down. That means less efficiency. So as they are, all of them, by the way, declining enrollment. Every single one of those districts, middle border and the two adjacents, all declining enrollment. As they're dropping in enrollment, they're not cutting staff at the same rate that we are to increase efficiency. So that's just a quick look to answer that question. What have you been doing so far? Next slide, please.
Before you go on, would you say more about increasing efficiency, what that means?
Yes, actually, and we'll go on anyway, because I'll talk about it in the next slide a little bit. Yep, thank you. So these are the actual numbers. So these are the districts that we compare to, and this is the ratio of students to FTE. FTE is full-time equivalent, so think of that as a staff. Every number would be a staffing position. So if we look at our numbers, 2019-20, we're at 8.2. So for every 8.2 students in the district, there was one employee. That's all employees. That's not just teachers. Teachers, support staff, office, bus, healthcare, all of the positions that we have that support our students. That's that number. You can see that it slightly went down, and then climbed, slight dip between 8.8 and 8.54. If we would predict where we'd be in 25-26 is slight increase likely because we had a few more reductions in total staffing, so we would see that go up. But what this tells us is we are the leanest district in all of these comps. Not second to the bottom, not right in the lower part, the leanest. We don't have room to cut more staff without doing one of two things. One way we can do it, to jack up class sizes. If we increase class sizes, that would make that number, it would become even more lean, and that's one way that we could make that cut. It's one of the only ways. We'll talk about other strategies we have in place, but that's the reality of that data. So if someone says, well, you haven't adjusted staffing as we've lost students, that's not true. We have. And previous administrations have done it. They've done it for the last several years. It's not a new thing. It's not like all of a sudden we're making these adjustments. This has happened over several iterations of administrative teams. They've been making the adjustments. We can go to the next one, please. So we talked about this. We're trending leaner with a higher ratio. Regionally, we are the most lean. I didn't run numbers for the whole state. We have to download this data, enter it in the spreadsheet, do all that, so I limited the scale. But we know we're very efficient. So if someone asks that question, this is the answer to that question. We can go to the next one, please. This just looks at where are we right now. So same data, just looking at a different way. Here we are. Here's every other district. And as the bar gets shorter, that means less efficient. That means you're adding staff for fewer kids in your district. Now we looked at it a different way too, because the next question is, what about just licensed staff? Licensed staff. Licensed or certified staff would be classroom teachers or specialists that they get their degree, they have a license to teach. Mainly teachers, a few other positions. Does not count support staff, does not look at administrators, does not look at any office support, just teachers. So these are actual numbers, not a ratio. So as this goes down, that means the number of staff is decreasing. This is our staff, total licensed staff in 2019, 122.78. We're at 109.3. So we have cut staff as as our enrollment has dropped. It's been proportionate. Now, there was the big cut. Again, graphically, you can see that's $1.4 million in cuts right there. That slight bounce back, the positions that we have added in the past 3 to 4 years, there's one that was added back, that was middle school health assistant. That was a position that was eliminated, that was added back. That's the only position of those $1.4 million that was added back. None of them have crept back in, not one, other than the middle school health position. Now, where you do see an increase, we've talked about the fact that student needs are increasing. That dip up, that represents either one-on-one assistance that work with students with significant needs. There is some healthcare support for students that have health plans. That's built into that. That's where we're seeing some increases. When the majority of positions we've added this year, and even going into last year before we were here, but looking at them, were positions that were designed to meet the needs of students with some significant needs. So that's that over time. Again, that's actual people, not a ratio. If we go to the next slide, this is the ratio. So you can see again that we're trending more lean over time with licensed staff as well. So that's a question that will be out there, and it's something that we need to be prepared to respond to if the question comes up. But then back to Danny, so your question of like, can we do cuts? Absolutely, and we have to. So no matter what, we can't just ask for new money and not continue to adjust and look at how we operate. But we need to be careful, because even the 1.4 million in cuts, were there some that were easier decisions to make? Sure, some were easier than others, but none were easy. It wasn't like there were all these positions floating around that we didn't need. They were all difficult decisions that had to be made. And the team that went through that did a good job, because we still are doing good work. We still have a strong system. The cuts hurt, but we're still able to operate. Because they weren't added back, it's not like you can go back to the well and have another $1.4 million in cuts. I can sit back down now. That opportunity doesn't exist. But there's 3 things you can do in order to make up that money, and we have to, because we can't count on a referendum passing. we have to plan as if it's not going to. We have to have a plan that says, if it doesn't, what will we do? So one thing would be increasing class sizes. If you could, we're gonna fast forward. Can you bring up the enrollment document? It's a couple down in the presentation. There we go. And then now I'm really gonna test you. Can you change some numbers for me? So I'm gonna come back. Okay. I got all comfy for a second. So one of the questions would be, so what would those cuts look like? So if we look on the bottom, these are actual average class sizes. These are real kids, teachers in our school right now, are actual numbers. These are the average class sizes. You can see they range from a low of 19.6 to a high of 27.25 when we get up in the high school numbers. It is really easier to do class sizes JK through 8 because kids stay together more. In high school, a lot of electives, a lot of choices, harder to get a handle on class sizes. So we're looking, I believe what we did at the high school, did we look at English sections? I think, Amanda, does that sound familiar? Sorry, totally put you on the spot. Yeah, I don't either. I think we looked at English sections to come up with that number because that's the class that kids take that's most common. Already in high school and math, they're taking different levels, so I think we looked at English to come up with that. But anyway, so if we look at one of these lower numbers, like if we look at in second grade, 21.5 students, could we reduce a section going into the following year by reducing one of those numbers? And yes, we could. So if you change that to 3.
I'm on view only.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Magically, if we would change that to 3, I think it would be like 29 would be that new class size. That's what we'd have to look at. Because we have 4 and 5 sections, they're relatively big swings by reducing a section. Okay, oh, thank you.
It should do it automatically.
Great.
Did it do it?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so it was the 20,
8.6.
yep, 28 points, so yeah, between 28 and 29 per class. So that's one of the ways we'd have to cut in order to do that. It's not like picking positions that exist elsewhere. Might we be able to do that with some? Certainly, we can have that conversation, and we would have that conversation with everyone around the table. I don't see us coming up with $1.5 million of cuts doing that. Now, the other thing that we would have to look at is reducing programming. So there's certain programs that they cost money. Most programs that we operate cost money, whether we're talking about extracurricular, co-curricular, or even curricular offerings, where when we offer different programs, like say at the high school, some of them cost money. So we can look at reducing those to make up some of those differences, or we can look at increasing fees for participation in extracurriculars. Those are kind of the bigger levers that we would have. Might there be a position or two that we could have a conversation about? Absolutely. I don't see a lot. I don't see a lot of fluff at this point.
But to be realistic, you're looking at, in 2 years, a minimum of $500,000, and in 3, 4, or 5 years, over $1 million. So you're looking for, what we're asking, Danny's asking, what are the cuts? We're looking for $500,000 to $1 million.
Yeah.
For you to come back with like this, if we don't pass this, or this is what we would have to, what could we do to decrease our budget?
Correct.
Over the next, that's upwards of $500,000 to $1 million.
Yep, and we're gonna start at the
maybe
half.
more time.
Yeah.
To put this out there maybe, and see if we do increase enrollment.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, and that's when you get into, if we decide to go to referendum. It's always an if, right? Can we continue to cut into the next 4 years? We sure could, but then I can tell you what's gonna happen to enrollment. I mean, I'll tell you right now what'll happen to enrollment if we do that. We're gonna lose kids hand over fist if we end up having class sizes in the elementary that are 30 across the board. People won't stay. So there are things we can do, but we have to say, should we do them? Whenever we're balancing a budget, whether that's balancing budget at home, or balancing budget in a business, or balancing budget in a school system, you always have to look at revenues and expenses at the same time. This is not something that we can lower expense out of. We're gonna have to look at revenues. Now, there's some really good news in all of this. One is, we have a lot of room. We have at least right off the bat, $1 million of room starting next year if we restructure debt slightly, that will have zero impact to the taxpayer. So we could have if we had an operational referendum for $1 million, and the question is, well, what will that do to the mill rate? Nothing is the answer, zero. And it's actually probably more than that, and Rod's working really hard on getting those numbers firmed up. But ideally, we would love to be able to bring a referendum to the taxpayers that we can say, this will help us right the ship, fix the structural issues we have in the budget, and not cost taxpayers anything in terms of overall mill rate. That becomes easier when we see enrollment and when we see the community growing, so as that tax base grows, it becomes easier to absorb those things, but that's the hope. We're not in a position, fortunately, we have a lot of great things happening in our community and in our school district. We're not in a position that if we add, it's going to all end up on the taxpayers' backs, and we take that very seriously. So our job as an admin team is to come up with $500,000 worth of cuts, and that's what we'll bring to you. This is what our recommendation would be if we have to have $500,000 worth of cuts. Part of that actually because it's the why, right? You know, if we do end up going to referendum, that's part of the why. This is what we would be facing if we do not pass that referendum. We're not gonna hold anyone hostage, we're not gonna inflate those numbers, it's gonna be real. This is literally what we do if it doesn't pass. So that's, it's not real fun work, and there might be an idea out there that those of us around the table like doing this and it's fun to go to referendum. It's not. No one looks forward to this. No one looks forward to asking taxpayers for more money. It's not fun work. But it's important work because we can't do the good work we do for our kids without the appropriate funding. So that's all I have on that. Questions about time, well, before we get to questions, let's talk big picture questions. One of the things that would be helpful is if you as board members share with us what questions you'd like to have responses to the next time we meet. I'll gather those, and then as an admin team, we can start getting those for you. I know it's kind of putting you on the spot right now, like come up with the questions. Email me throughout the week. We'll start, if you have stuff right now, we'll start, but then just, whatever questions you have related to this, throw them our way, we'll do our best to answer them or at least have a response to them. We'll start now. If there's anything like up front, you're like, hey, this is something I really want to know. The first one is $500K in cuts. What else would you like to know?
Is there any research that shows the impact on academic achievement based on the number of kids that are in a class? I know you guys went around and, did the talking with each staff member, and something that I hear, the two things that staff are concerned about is class sizes and behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And when you increase a class size, you also increase the number of behavior problems in the class just because there's so many more kids.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, our classrooms are not built to hold a lot of kids. When we built that high school, the bids came in over budget. We had to stop, we had to rebid the whole thing. It took almost a whole extra year. And one of the ways we were able to address it was making the classrooms smaller.
Mm.
And high school kids are big.
Yeah, they're all bigger than me.
And at the elementary school, your classrooms at the elementary school, they're not very big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I go to first grade every week. There's 19, 20 kids in there, and it's crowded.
Yeah. I like to go there too because then I do feel big. So I spend more time there. Yeah, that's something we can look into, the class size design, like what would be, based on the square footage in our classes, what's optimal size, and, there is a lot of work I was hoping we would have done this year to have this conversation next year. And one was those class size guidelines we talked about. I would have loved to have had that done before we're having this conversation, but like I said, once Rod ran those initial projections, there was no way we can't start to have this conversation. I think that would be irresponsible not to begin the conversation. So I've got research on impact class size, the cuts, class size design, other things preliminarily that you'd want us to look into?
I would just say, kind of in addition to what Lori just talked about, is what would the impact on the goals that were just presented tonight be? I mean, how are we gonna increase, our percentile if there's the impact of the students? So, some feedback on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a comment, I was watching, Stillwater School Board's latest, latest meeting, they were making 5.2 million in cuts, and they had some pretty strategic ideas. So just, they ran over health insurance, transportation, and then they talked about a new, model in the elementary school, where it was like 29 or 30 kids, but with a teacher, licensed teacher, but then, a teacher's aide or assistant, so.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting.
I'll take a look. Yeah, generally speaking, Minnesota schools tend to have higher class sizes, but they also pay their teachers a lot more. That's the trade-off. That's why they have higher class sizes, because it costs more to fund a school, because of the way the contracts are negotiated, so you end up ramping up class sizes. But we talked about the impact on kids, and Laura, you alluded to it, but the impact on teachers as well. So there have been 3 requests this year to consider adding staff. We've had to turn them all down because the budget couldn't absorb them. Because we have some grade levels where the class sizes were climbing up. Now, fortunately, it's not really fortunate, but if we go back to that, could you click back on that enrollment document? We track migration in this document. When we talk about migration, those are students in and students out. If you could,
Which one is it?
no, that's the right one. If you can just shrink it down. That was the right one you were on.
Oh, that one?
Yep. And then, shrink it down, and then in the lower, I'm sorry, it's actually not lower, mid right-hand side is the total change. It's in the chart, not the graph. So up from there. There we go. And then over to the right. Keep on going.
That's as far.
Oh, that's where it goes. There we go. -4. See that -4? That's the total migration this year as of right now. There's a few students that actually added in there. It's fluctuated anywhere from -4 is the lowest to +3 as kids come in and come out. As we look at those numbers, the class sizes that were running the highest actually had some kids leave that relieved the class size a little bit. It's not a good way to do it, but it did help out in terms of the overall impact. But that is something, as Lori said, that we hear from staff members a lot, that first of all, that they value our commitment to efficient class sizes and not ramping them up, and that is a fear that they will be ramped up.
Any other questions? Steve, anything?
No, the only comment I was going to make was back to what David said about maybe a flat fine regarding the tax effect on the district taxpayers.
Gotcha, yep.
Yeah, just to build off of that as well, I think there's a lot of, I don't know, just a misunderstanding of how that actually works. We saw in the last referendum about, well, you're taxing clearly, it has to cost money. So I think some good clarification of how does this past debt fall off to allow us to levy will be helpful.
Yep, absolutely.
Just to truly understand, or help us understand.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate it, and again, I really was hoping this was gonna be a next year conversation, but we'll do good work and we'll make right decisions for kids ultimately.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment too, I second what Danny said earlier about the 10% and just really taking guts seriously and really working hard at that, and it's knowing that you will is exciting and appreciate it in advance, but also the, all that data and comparing all the surrounding school districts, really interesting stuff. And what jumps out to me is if there's one area we stand out or maybe have a benefit, it's that we are in a very unique location that should be hopefully more ripe for, you know, a more rapid growth rate than anyone else if we, you know, so I'm interested in maybe those first, we got a 5-year plan, maybe those first couple of years, really trying to invest and try to pull as many students in and minimize the costs.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, thanks, Corey.
Actually, Dave, is there a way we could illustrate property taxes in our district by the school district, the municipality, and the county? I think a lot of times we're telling people what we're doing with their tax dollars, and they still get clubbed over the head with property taxes.
Sure. Yeah, so meaning like a more thorough understanding of the distribution?
Our percentage.
Yeah, okay.
Of what part of their tax bill is actually coming here,
I'm
right?
pretty sure it says on the bill.
It does.
I just,
Yeah. But maybe even like sometimes you'll see like sort of an annotated bill, like here's a fake one,
yeah.
and then here's what it all means, here's where it all goes. Lori's brought this up and has been advocating for it, and we talked about it when we were doing the WASB resolutions, to then also break out money that looks like it's going to our school district, but it's going to voucher schools, which was, I think it was
About
80.
80 somewhere between 80 and 90,000.
Yeah, $89,000, I believe, was the amount that, when you look at your tax bill, it's gonna say that went to the Somerset School District. It didn't. It went someplace completely different. Excellent. I appreciate it. Like I said, throw the questions at us. Just email me. We'll put them on the list, and we'll do our best to respond. All right.
Maybe, comparing ours to surrounding districts, that's what certain families look at, and they also look at where they wanna move.
Yeah.
And I know we're already lower, so already somewhat attractive, but if we up it and others don't, then.
Yes.
we'll be stick- Overall, mill rate for school, but
Yeah.
the overall tax.
Yeah, I did look at that when because we know rough numbers for $1 million of increased revenue, it's about 30, I think between 30 and 40 cents, I believe is what Debbie from Baird told us. We'll get that, Rod will get that more precise to know, like, and per million is a good way to look at it. So we know how much that would cost, but that doesn't account for the fact that we have debt falling off. So even if we added 30 cents, we would not move in our ranking. We'd still be on the lower half, and we wouldn't jump up past the next district. And the next one that's lower has a referendum that's going in April of this year. That's a 92-cent referendum. So they're gonna jump way up. So it's, a lot of it is about timing, but we are fortunate that we have debt falling off. Some districts have no debt, and you're kind of stuck because there's nothing falling off that you can then make up. So if you have to go to the taxpayers, it's all increases. So we're fortunate that that's not the case. All right. And I'm gonna, the next thing, I already talked about enrollment reports, so nothing there, and there are no referendum invoices, and the financial reports are the typical ones. Little preview, Rod's doing some great work on a new format for some of the financial reports that we're looking at. I think you'll really like, they're super easy to read, really dynamic, and so soon you'll be seeing those under financial reports.
Can I just go back to the referendum invoices? Is there a timeline where we can take this off the agenda? And then with that, I know there's still those walls to go in, correct?
Yeah.
Like, is that still an outstanding bill at SAP?
That's the same, it's the same answer. When that's done, then likely we'll be able to take this one off.
Okay.
So that's the only thing that's still
Is there any
outstanding.
timeline on that?
There is, they had to wait till, originally they thought they were gonna be able to get it done before the musical. That wasn't the case, so I don't know exactly, but they said they've got a resolution. Close, yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions for anyone here on the report section? That was a lot.
back to the doors. It's literally, remember when we did the tour and there was that Japanese wall covering that was, it's literally that thing again. It goes on those same walls, that's literally what's holding us up again. So, yeah, good stuff. All right,
All right, well, hearing no other questions, we'll move on. Next item is items for approval. There's two things here, I'll just make a quick note. The shared service contract, obviously no changes from what we talked about 2 weeks ago. B is a change in our regular board meeting from April 20th to the 27th. Time would stay the same, 6 p.m. The reason for this is due to the election that's coming up in a couple of weeks. The date to swear in new board members is the 27th.
that's the last.
Correct,
day we
so-
do it, yeah.
If we have a meeting on the 20th, it puts us off in our flow to swear in new board members, so just moving it that 1 week would bring new board members in. And then we would also just re-elect our board officers and all of our organizational topics that have to get addressed, and then we could just flow into May. So the recommendation would be to change that meeting date to the 27th. So if someone is prepared, I'll take a motion to approve those items.
I'll make a motion to approve the CISA 11 shared service contract for 26-27, and to change our board regular meeting from April 20th to April 27th.
Motion by Lori, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Bruce, any discussion?
And then are we going back to the regular schedule or?
Yeah, so
have
that,
it 2 weeks in a row?
yeah, so yeah, we had previously approved that calendar.
Yeah.
That's why we put it on here, but yeah, it would go back to regular. All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve any or all of these items?
I'll make a motion to approve, 6A, 1, B, 1 and 2, C1.
I'll second that.
There's a motion by Bruce, a second by Danny. You did say all of them, right, Bruce?
Yeah, there's no athletic inactivity.
Okay, all right, very good. That's why you omitted that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Last item, just a reminder, in 2 weeks, April 6th, that's our work session at 6 p.m. Again, the next meeting will be April 27th. That's a regular meeting, listening session, 30 minutes prior. There is a spring election on Tuesday, April 7th. And then there's a link on the agenda, and it's on the website for voter information and candidates for school board. Last item on the agenda is district celebrations. Corey, can I start with you?
I'll just say I really appreciate all the updates and good to see the Boy Scouts here.
Ian?
Thank all our administrators for all the work they're putting together and doing for us. A lot of all-conference athletes, way too many to list. Great job. And hope everybody had a fun and safe spring break.
Thanks. Lori?
In addition to Ian's items, thank you to Leslie Thomas. She has continued to apply for child care stabilization grants and just got another one. The latest award gave the district over $3,000, which we can directly apply to help with our general payroll and benefit expenses, and nearly $900 to be dispersed as retention bonuses to help keep those employees with us. The summer school catalogs are available and registration open today. Summer school was always a big item for elementary and middle school, and even high school. We have a lot of things going on at the high school for summer school now too. And spring sports begin this month at the middle school and high school. So that's exciting as well.
Thank you. Bruce?
They did it all, thanks for everybody who came in and presented and came in to have fun and watch our meeting tonight.
Dan?
I don't have much to say. April 1st is National Paraprofessional Appreciation Day, so thank you to all of those hard workers.
Steve?
No, I'll pass it, right, thanks.
Yeah, and I think I think it's all been covered on the table for me as well. With that, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Make motion to adjourn.
Motion by Bruce, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Corey. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is adjourned at 7:39.